Hey guys, Sampson here, Sampson in the wild. Today I'm out in a little remote forest. It's fairly old growth here, so it's a nice open forest. There's not a lot of moss or undergrowth. It makes it a really nice spot to just kind of walk around and explore. And today I was out finding fatwood. So if you check out my video linked above here on how to find fatwood in the forest and how to use fatwood for starting fires with ferro rod, you can learn all about it and find out about one of nature's most amazing natural fire starters that you can find yourself as well. But right now I want to talk about a bit of the gear that I carry with me when I'm out in the forest just about every day. These are my go-tos. So number one, I got my Silky Big Boy Saw. Now the Big Boy, it's got a 16-inch blade. I chose the extra large teeth. You can get this in large or extra large. So they're probably 3/8 of an inch or better. Extremely sharp. And they do an interesting heat treatment on these saws where it's a fairly soft and flexible steel, which gives it strength and toughness and flexibility while out in the forest. But normally a steel that's that soft and flexible won't be very hard for cutting through wood for a long time, and it'll get soft quickly. Whereas this one here, they do a hardening treatment on just the teeth themselves, and it makes them extremely hard. And a lot of times you can't even sharpen these saws with a normal file. I personally just use small diamond files, about an 800 grit, 600 grit diamond files, and just touch up the edges of those cutting teeth. But they stay sharp for a long time. I can easily get a season or two without having to touch this guy up. It's got two locking positions. One opens up a little wider like this. So if you're trying to reach in one-handed into an awkward location, and it is a pull saw, it cuts on the pull only, so you can use it one-handed quite easily in those awkward locations, you know, reaching up high to get a dry branch down. It folds up for storage. You gotta watch when you close, because this one, like the bigger ones, have a lock in about that position so you don't close it on your fingers. But this one's the biggest one they make that doesn't have that lock. And those teeth are so sharp, if you caught that on your fingers, you'd be leaking for sure. It's got a nice rubberized handle. I think it weighs about 1.5 pounds. I've got some shots of me with it on my digital scale at home, so I'll throw that in the video with the exact weights. But it's light enough, you can carry it with your backpack and pretty much everywhere you go. But it's solid enough, it's going to hold up to whatever abuse you put it through in the forest. And big enough, you can cut good sized logs. You know, you can take a 10 or 12-inch log pretty easily with this. You probably see me using this saw in a few of my other videos when I'm collecting for fire or building structures. You can go through a log, you know, the size of your leg in less than a minute. And for a backpacking saw, a nice folding saw that's, you know, it's only about 16 inches long or so, when it's folded, nice and light for in your pack, it's just perfect for that type of task. I do have a smaller Silky saw. Silky is the brand, but it's called the Pocket Boy, and it's got an 8-inch blade on it and a nice little rubberized handle as well. A lot smaller, but good for shorter trips, good for emergency use. I always keep mine in my truck personally, so if for whatever reason I don't have my pack in my truck, at least I've got my little Pocket Boy. And it is literally small enough you can throw it in your pocket. So if you're going out for a quick hike in a fire, and sorry the wind turned, you can't really see me through the smoke, but it's doing its job at keeping the bugs away today. So it's small enough you can keep it in your pocket with you, and if you don't want to carry a pack, it'll still do its job. Now the next one I've got with me is my favorite axe that I think I've ever owned, and I've probably owned, you know, 20 or 30 different axes throughout the last 20-25 years. This is the Gransfors Bruks small forest axe. They're hand forged in Sweden. They do cost a couple of bucks, you know, they're not like an axe you're going to get at Canadian Tire or Home Depot, but it is a high quality Swedish steel. This one, it's got the, I don't know if you can see the maker's marks stamped into it there, but this was forged by Tobias Tomke. He's one of their younger steel smiths, axe smiths, but he makes some amazing axe heads. I got this one on discount where there had been something wrong with the handle, so they actually cut the handle off, and I bought the head separate, and then I got myself the Gransfors Bruks hickory, and I was able to choose through about 50 of them. So I got a real nice tight grained handle where the grain of the wood was actually naturally curving up slightly right here. Because one problem you'll have with a lot of hickory handles is when the grain runs straight, if the handle itself curves upwards, you'll have end grain cut into the shape of the handle. So if you ever make a bad swing, or even over time, those end grains, if they're kind of stacked like this and the handle curves up like that, those bottom ones will tend to split off, and that'll start a split in your handle. Whereas this one, I don't know if we can see it in this light, but it naturally, the grain started curving up there and followed the shape of the handle, and that made it amazingly strong for me. So I set this handle with a wood wedge and then a steel cross wedge in there to lock everything together. I do leather craft as well, so I made myself a little leather overstrike protector, because a lot of times I'll use this axe on a lot bigger wood, and you'll still get some damage on your handle. Even if you're not overstriking and you're hitting properly, it can still cause some damage to your handle as you're trying to wedge through a bigger chunk of wood. Because obviously if I'm backpacking or hiking in the forest, I'm not carrying a 10 or 12 pound splitting maul in my pack. I'm carrying a 2.5 pound multi-purpose axe that does a lot of things. And I keep this guy, it's pretty sharp. I don't know if I'd quite shave with it today, but it is sharp enough that I can shave wood quite easily. If you watch my Finding Fat Wood video, you can see here that I could shave curls with it really quick and easy because it is that sharp. And I've probably been out 10 times or so since my last sharpening, and I'll take this thing down to a razor edge where I can literally shave my beard with it, and it holds that edge extremely well. It's the difference between a quality axe that might cost you 150, a couple $100 versus, you know, an axe you're going to get at Home Depot or something for 20 or 30 bucks, that while it might do the job for you, it's nowhere near the quality of this. So if you only get out every now and then and you don't use your axe that often, it's fine. Go get yourself a Fiskars, or, you know, something that costs a lot less. But if you're like me and you're going to get out in the forest 20, 30, 50 times or more per year, spending that money on a quality tool is well worth it. You know, if I look at how many days I've been out in the forest with this specific axe, hundreds, couple hundred, might cost me $1 a day to have a real quality tool. It's well worth it in my mind. So we went from the saw for breaking down big branches and logs into smaller pieces that then you can use your axe to split up into smaller pieces to get your fire going. Now I'm going to go to my blades, my knives. This one here is a Spyderco Mule. I hand-handled this. That's bird's eye maple with a boiled linseed oil finish on it. This is CPN S45VN steel. It's not the absolute hardest steel. It's not the absolute toughest steel, but it is very corrosion resistant. It's decently hard and decently tough, which actually make it a really good all-purpose blade steel for being out in the forest. If I'm out in the bush for a few days at a time and it's raining a lot, my leather sheath gets wet, I can be comfortable putting it away, throwing it in the truck or throwing it in my pack at night when I go to sleep, and knowing that by the time I get out of the bush, it's not going to be rusty. Because if you use, you know, some of the more tool steel blades, high carbon steel blades, you have to take a lot better care of them when you're in the forest. If you put them away wet like that overnight, you get up in the morning and expect to do some fine blade work, you can find that light sheen of rust on your steel, on your blade, and that's enough that it'll take the hair whittling edge off of your knife. You know, I sharpened this one a couple weeks ago. I've only been out a couple of times since then, but it's still sharp enough that easily I'm taking my arm hair off, and it it does everything I need it to do. You know, the tip is extremely sharp. Say you got a big splinter in your finger, you got to dig it out, it'll do its job. You're not going to break the tip off real easily. I use this a lot, even though it's a smaller blade. You know, it's only about a 3-inch blade. I'll use this for batoning wood. It's a big, fat, leaf-shaped blade, full tang, steel, runs right through the middle. Just about indestructible or bulletproof. Some guys will carry these big 8 or 10-inch blades. I would way rather put a couple of pounds into a quality axe, which is way more versatile, and then carry a nice fixed blade knife. You know, smaller fixed blade. I don't need a big blade. Mostly what I'm using this for is feather sticks, getting my fire started, a little bit of food prep. I don't use it for breaking down big wood. I'll use my saw and my axe for that. It's way more energy efficient, way safer as well than trying to throw around a big 10-inch blade, trying to break down wood it's not really designed for. Now, one other thing with knives is I always carry a second knife on me. This one here is my Spyderco Military. This is my work knife. I was actually out for work for a couple hours today before I was able to get out for this hike. And this is a nice knife because it's got a big enough blade. It's easily one-hand operational. Fits well in my pocket. It's got a bit of weight to it. It's got a G10 handle. This one here is S30V steel. It's not quite as hard and not quite as wear resistant as the S45 in my fixed blade, but still a good quality steel. Very corrosion resistant. Cost effective. Price is pretty decent on this blade, and I like it because I got pretty big hands and it fits my hands well for a work knife. You know, my pinky's not falling off the back end. Sometimes I'll carry some smaller knives, and especially for work, I like a bigger knife. I can be a little more abusive with it. Oh, that wind turned again. With a folding knife like this, I like a bigger knife, especially for at work. You know, it's big enough, it fits my whole hand. Pinky finger's not falling off the back end. This one actually has a nice bit of jimping and a nice thumb ramp at the back end, so you can get lots of force for pushing when you need it. It's a liner lock. So on the inside, it's got that liner that you push sideways. And this one has perfect lockup. You know, sometimes you'll see that liner just barely catches, and it always makes you a little unsure how well it's going to hold, or if the liner goes too far. Sometimes you wonder how long it's going to last, especially if you open and close it a lot like I do at work. This one's got the bigger spidey hole, which I really like because I just catch the tip of my middle finger in there, flick it open. If you need a little more control, you can put your thumb in there, open and close like that. Great knife, perfect for what I need it for. And then often I'll also have a third folding knife in my pack. You know, some people say that's a bit of overkill, but when you go into really remote locations, you can't be too safe. You know, if for some reason my fixed blade, if my sheath latch, my snap there ever popped open and my knife fell out, could you imagine getting into a long hike? Maybe you're 10 miles back in the bush. You know, you'll probably never see another person back there. You're planning on being in for a couple of days. And you found while you were hiking, maybe you reached into your hip pouch on your pack and went to grab a snack while you were hiking, and somehow you popped your sheath and your blade fell out. And you got to camp and you had no knife for starting a fire at night. Maybe it was raining halfway there. You're soaked. You just want to get warm and set up your camp and get to sleep for night. If you don't have a knife, you can be in real trouble for getting your fire going. So, like I say, I've always got my pocket knife as well, and then I often carry another folder in my pack too. So, those are my three main tools for starting fires. My pack tools, you know what I made? My Silky Big Boy Saw, my Gransfors Bruks small forest axe, my fixed blade, which is often the Spyderco Mule. Got about a dozen of those now. I really like this one just because that bird's eye maple handle feels real nice in my hand, and it looks good too. My Spyderco Military folder, my work knife. You know, sometimes I'll carry Benchmades, sometimes I'll carry Gerbers, whatever. Whatever fits your style too. You know, it doesn't really have to be anything crazy. It doesn't have to be super expensive. But those are my kind of go-tos for when I'm out in the forest backpacking. Now having this might add another 3 or 4 pounds to your pack, but realistically, how much weight is your life worth? If you're going on a trail where you're going to see 20 or 30 different people throughout the day, and if something goes wrong, you're okay. You're going to see somebody else, or you're going somewhere where you have cell service, and if you get into trouble, you can just pick up your phone and make that call, no problem. But if you're like me and you're going back places where you could be back there for a month and never see another person, where you're more likely to see a bunch of bears than you are another human, where you may get cell service if you get to the top of a mountain and get lucky, or you hike for another day to get back out to get the cell service, okay. But for a guy like me, that extra 5 pounds in my pack, 4 or 5 pounds, whatever it is well worth that peace of mind knowing that I've got the tools that I need to do the job I need to do when I'm in the bush. So let me know in the comments, what do you guys like to carry? You know, do some of you guys carry smaller hatchets? Do some of you guys carry bigger fixed saws or smaller folding saws, or the all-in-one? I've got a little Gerber set that's an axe with a saw that fits into the handle. It's a little gimmicky for me. I found it never really functioned as well as 2 separate tools. Maybe where you are in the world, you're way better off carrying a big machete. I'd love to hear and see some other people who spend time in the forest and use completely different tools than me, because this is suited to my landscape, to my geography and my climate and the type of hiking and backcountry work that I do. Whereas if you're in a jungle and you're facing more vines, or maybe you're way up in the frozen north and you got to have a chainsaw and a snowmobile with you if you expect to survive, let me know. I'm super interested in seeing how people do things in different parts of the world. But this is how I do it. Now, last piece of gear that ties all my stuff together is my pack. So this is actually a Dakine snowboarding pack, and it's got these straps here. You can strap your snowboard on the back when you're hiking. It's pretty small. It's about a 20-liter pack. It's perfect for day trips. I always have this one in my truck. A fire kit and a ferro rod always inside of there, as well as I like to carry a ferro rod in my pocket and my pocket knives. I've got a backup knife inside that pouch as well. I'll often carry a water filter in case I go somewhere where I can't drink direct out of the creek. I've always got a raincoat and usually a wool sweater, sometimes a down puffy jacket depending on the season. And then it's able to hold my saw on one side and my axe on the other. And the nice thing about carrying your axe like that is when it's up on my back, I can also just reach back and draw it out of my pack, which makes it super easy for collecting wood, even if it's a worst case bear defense. And that covers just about all the gear that I carry when I'm in the forest. This was an amazing little hike today. You know, I was down by the creek earlier. It was super nice, lots of berries, lots of food to eat, fresh, cool, crisp water. And then today, to find this little forest up here, so lush. So many mushrooms, moss, just a gorgeous little spot. And even though those bugs were getting to me for a while, having this fire and sitting up here on top of this knoll has just been amazing. Clouds starting to clear, getting a little more sunshine coming in. Really makes the colors stand out. Everything's so lush and green here right now. We've had a lot of rain this winter. Everything's super wet, growing real well. Just an amazing day to be in the forest. And I can't tell you how blessed I am to live in this part of the country where you can get out in a place like this, free to roam, free to live, free to be yourself.